welcome back to another brand new series that is going on right now. But welcome to Summer in the Psalms. This series will be an 8-session series that takes a look at different psalms and how they connect to us. I thought it's a perfect way to kind of end out our summer, and I'd say let's just dive into it. A lot of us, I feel like, can say that this past year and a half, and even still today, is a little crazy, or have been a little crazy. In many ways, we can look at our own faith we take through life, as a journey we take through life, and see the reminder to stay rooted, focused, hopeful, and mission-minded. Why? Since our lives have been rocked this past year, and like I said, even today, we need to have that anchor. And to have an anchor means to be rooted in something that's solid and stable, like our faith in God. When our life seems rocky, or if we're just facing the highs and lows of life, of schools, of friends, of assignments, our faith helps us stay rooted in God. Our faith helps us stay focused on His plan for us. Our faith helps us remain hopeful for what God has in store. Our faith helps keep us mission-minded to the life that God wants us to live. You see, God wants us to live according to what He teaches, not what we see on social media or TVs or movies and etc. And it's hard. It's hard to do that when we see others having fun and wanting to live like those people, and because it's fun, it's calm, it's exciting. I'm here to tell you that the Christian life is far from dull and lame. As we focus on living like God, there's going to be things that we'll need to stay focused on and to stay away from, so that way it helps us to honor God and reflect on who He is. So today we're going to dive into Psalm 1 and talk about how we can live a life that is rooted in God. First off, I want to talk about the tension. We tend not to listen to warning signs that are given to us, especially when we want to do things our own way, because, we prefer to do things our own way. When we're told that it won't work out or take a big risk and what we're doing could lead us to the wrong choices, we can have this want to do something how we want to, and not really listen to others, and this can lead us down a road that God tries to keep us off of. So why do we do this? Well, if you knew the consequences of choosing to do with something, or pursuing that want, or saying what you really wanted to say, then you'd probably choose not to follow through with it. Unfortunately, life doesn't work in reverse, only forward. Can only know what's going on by what we experience and see now. However, there is a way to see the consequences of our actions. It's just after we made the choice that we get to see them. Then, and only then, we can understand the impact of choices we made. At the moment, we can choose not to care or consider other outcomes because what we want is so important to us. And we genuinely hope that things happen how we want them to, which leads us to an easy pass thinking about the consequences. Why? Because we choose not to look at the warning signs. We see a warning label or are warned about something we may do, and it's easy not to look at them. When we see that this choice comes with consequences, though, it's only then can we reflect on what we learned and look ahead with the knowledge on what to do so that we don't make the same mistake again. So what if I told you that the Bible can teach us who God is and what He did through Jesus, and has many stories and writings that can help us try to not make bad choices? Again, that's what we're starting to look at today through the book of Psalms. Psalms are one of 5 books that is considered wisdom literature because they give us just that, wisdom. And we can read it and see not just the warnings for life, but also a guide to living a life that honors God and reflects who He is and helps keep us grounded and rooted in Him. So as we begin this new series, we're going to go through one of the most popular books of the Old Testament that is full of poems that show honest and raw emotions. Psalms were written about around the 1st century and include poems written by King David, Solomon, and others. The term psalm even just means song, and most of these songs include praises to God for His work in the life and lives of Israel. An interesting fact about Psalms is that you can read a chapter and look back to other parts of the Old Testament and see what story or historical event that it could be talking about. And these poems also show sadness and frustration and a cry out to God for help when David or the Israelites were in trouble. So as we read them, we're not just reading these cute, Instagram-worthy poems, but instead we're reading expressions of people that have gone through a lot and are asking God, crying out to Him for help, for strength, and for thankfulness. There's a lot we can learn, and that's what I'm hoping we learn over the next 8 sessions. So join me if you'd like. Words will be on the screen anyway. But join me if you want to in Psalm 1. We're going to start with verses 1 and 2. The truly happy person doesn't follow wicked advice, doesn't stand on the road of sinners, and doesn't sit with the disrespectful. Instead of doing those things, these persons love the Lord's instructions, and they recite God's instruction day and night. So this first part, we see that joy comes from following the Lord's instructions daily. The author opens with this big statement and reminds us that the joy of someone comes from following God's teaching. This can be reading the Bible daily, spending time with God daily. It's not following what could be a bad influence that could lead us to make some bad decisions later in life. So let's continue. Verses 3 and 4. They are like a tree replanted by streams of water, which bear fruit at just the right time and whose leaves don't fade. Whatever they do succeeds. It's not true for the wicked. They are like dust that the wind blows away. So the author is using 2 visual ideas to show what it means for us to be rooted in God and for someone who isn't. If a person is rooted in God, they read their Bible, they talk to God, they live like God wants them to, this person is like a tree. The person who is following God's teachings is like a tree that receives the proper nourishment that it needs to grow fruit and not wither. Now I'm sure you've probably seen a tree or a plant that didn't look healthy, and what would it normally need? Water. When a tree grows close to water, it can suck up the water through the earth and is always in this constant cycle of nourishment in order to be healthy. Now, a tree that is surrounded by dry land and is not watered dries up and wilts. And the author is showing us the difference between one who grows spiritually healthy, bears fruit, helps take care of others, and those who don't. The second imagery is actually even more profound. Verse 4 talks about the wicked being like chaff or dust, like we read, that the wind drives away. And this refers to what happens when people in the first century would gather grain to make bread. After cutting it down, they would take it to what's called the threshing floor, where the person would use a rake, pick a stack of wheat, and throw it into the air, which would loosen the wheat grains, making them fall to the ground, while the wheat stalks, or chaff, would blow away in the wind because it's super light. Again, the author is showing the difference between someone who is rooted in God and someone who is not. Being rooted in God allows you to be grounded and bear fruit, whereas that helps others. Whereas not being rooted in God can make you feel a little shaky and unfruitful. To be unfruitful just means that your life isn't producing to push forward God's plan for you or for the world. And you may enjoy living like that, but it's not grounded in anything, therefore it just may not be fulfilling to you. God wants you to be fruitful, and actually the last 2 verses of Psalm 1 talk about that. Verses 5 and 6 say, "And that's why the wicked will have no standing in the court of justice, neither will sinners in the assembly of righteous. The Lord is intimately acquainted with the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked is destroyed." Bottom line in the closing sentence for this lesson is, God knows your heart, and choosing not to be rooted in Him can be unfulfilling. So that's our first look into the book of Psalms. Stay tuned for the rest of the sessions as we go through the entirety of the book. We're not reading all the Psalms, but we're going to go through it. So join me next week for another session of Summer in the Psalms. As always, stay blessed.